The 54th Biel International Chess Festival has reached equator. Exactly half of the tournament has been played. In the classical tournament, the Grandmaster Triathlon, 3 rounds out of 7 have been played. The rapid tournament is finished, and today the action resumes with the 4th round. Yesterday was again quite an action-packed game with 2 decisive results in the Grandmaster tournament and really an instructive endgame by the chess legend Gata Kamsky. Let's have a look at what happened in the games. So we'll start with the game of Maxime Lagarde against Noel Studer. After e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, we got a Petrov defense. Knight e5, d6, knight f3, knight e4. Here it was Frenchman's turn to surprise his opponent. He played c4, a move he had never played before. After knight c6, d3, knight f6, d4, d5, c5. This was his idea, to play bishop b5, bishop takes on c6, double black's pawn at the c file, and then try to capitalize on that. Now here, Studer played g6, playing slightly aggressive with the idea to position the bishop on the long diagonal so that he can pressure the white pawn on d4 at some point. So bishop b5 was played, bishop g7, castle, castle, takes on c6, takes on c6, and queen a4. Now white is attacking the pawn on c6, which can be increased with knight e5 as well. Here Studer found a nice idea. He played a5 with clearly the idea of queen takes on c6 to meet with bishop d7, queen b7, rook b8, queen a7, rook a8 is just a draw by perpetual, as queen a6 is impossible because of bishop b5 and white loses the exchange. So that's why after a5 the Frenchman played knight c3. Rook a6 was a nice move by Studer. He defends the pawns on c6 and a5 with one move. Rook e1, bishop f5, bishop f4, knight h5, and here after bishop g5, queen b8, the Frenchman apparently made not the best decision, which clearly affected his decision later. He decided to sacrifice the pawn on b2, but to be honest, already the black's incoming threat of queen b4 was already quite annoying to meet. So here after queen takes on b2, rook c1 was the best move for white. Instead he played queen b3 with an idea that he's gonna push b4, trying to exploit the fact that the rook on a6 for black is undefended, and then there's also the g4 threat. However, now after knight f6, black is threatening with knight e4, so after the trade, b4. Here, the Swiss Grandmaster found a very nice idea. He played a4, sacrificing the pawn back. So knight a4 is impossible because of rook a8, and white loses the piece because of the pin. And if rook takes on a4, takes, black can play simply rook b8, and the pawn on b4 is impossible to defend because the black's bishop stands on f5. So that's why the Frenchman tried to complicate the matters. He played b5, c takes, and knight takes on d5, essentially being down a pawn and playing against 2 powerful bishops and strong passed pawns. So here, after rook d8, knight c7, rook a5, the game got a little sharp, but the Swiss Grandmaster was always on the top and was able to bring home the full point. As you can see, the black's pawns at the queen side started to march forward. Here there were already a number of ways how black could have sealed the deal and take the full point at home. He decided to play bishop e5, bishop takes on c6, and simply push b3, and white is unable to stop black from advancing the pawns. Now the Frenchman, being a very resourceful player, he tried to play e6 and push c7, clearly with some ideas either to play rook d1, rook d8, or maybe knight e8, and at least try to force a perpetual. After b2, rook d1, rook e8 was a very careful move. And now after knight e8, queen, check on e8, king g7. There's nothing for white because rook d7 check is impossible. There's a pin on the first rank, and after rook e7, king f8, rook f7, the same for king e8 or king g8, doesn't matter. White's checks are over and black simply wins. Really a great comeback for the Swiss Grandmaster, who had this very long game the day before against Alain Peixoto. So that marks his first victory in the classical tournament. Now in the second game, Alain Peixoto, who was playing yesterday against Noel Studer this long game, today he was meeting against Arturs Neikšāns, and they played it a very interesting French opening line. After knight f6, e5, knight e7, c3, knight c6, bishop d3. This is obviously huge theory, and here Sarin played the sharp f6, and in the interview he even mentioned some very crazy lines which start with knight g5, queen h5, showing really excellent preparation. Now here the Argentine #1 Grandmaster sacrificed the pawn, and after f takes on e5, he decided to play knight e5, takes, knight x on e5, sacrificing the pawn. So queen h5 check attacks the king on e8 and the knight on e5, forcing black to play knight f7, and here after c4, white was looking for a long-term compensation. Now g6 was played by Sarin. As he said in interview, he felt that g6 had to be played at some point, so better do it later than earlier than never. And after queen e2, bishop e7, here Argentine Grandmaster started slightly, I guess, to lose control, because one of the very interesting moves here for white was to play b4, sacrifice the second pawn, position the bishop on b2, and then somehow try to capitalize on the open false diagonals for the bishops. Rook e1 was still very good, but black managed to solidify the position, and the position inevitably simplified where white had a good compensation for the sacrificed pawn, but clearly not more. So there was one interesting moment here. White supposedly was a little pressing, but with no real targets, and at this moment Sarin played this amazing resource rook f5, simplifying the position. So the idea is that he sacrifices the exchange, and after bishop takes, g takes, bishop c6, maybe with ideas like bishop e7, queen c6, or bishop e4, black clearly takes over. So that's why the Argentine Grandmaster played rook e1, and this allowed for black to simplify the position and then reroute the king to the queen side. Now, just as the moment when it seemed that the Indian Grandmaster is taking over the game, something missed. Maybe he didn't find a plan, he had a better position, although, as they confessed in the interview, both sides pretty much felt that white is quite solid and it's very difficult for black to crash through. A number of moves were played. Black rerouted king to the queen side, to the safety, and after king a7, b3, h5 was slightly unexpected draw offer by the Indian Grandmaster, but it's quite understandable. He felt that the position is difficult to penetrate, as black cannot get through. Any queen c6 is going to be met by bishop e4, and the center is, well, blocked. So the draw was agreed, and they move on to the next day. Now, in the game between Boris Gelfand against Vincent Kiemer, the German chess prodigy, only 16 years old, here again we saw another Catalan. After bishop b4 check, bishop d2, bishop e7, castle, queen c2 was a rare move by the Israeli chess legend, clearly hinting at an early knight c3 and e4 idea. Now after c6, knight c3, the German accepted the challenge. He played d takes on c4. Now here after the short castle, knight e7, knight e4, knight takes on e4, queen takes on e4. Here black had a number of choices, but one of the most interesting ones he probably had, he could have tried to play b5 with the idea after queen c6 to play simply rook b8 and bishop b7. Black is enjoying really an excellent position. And if white doesn't take it and he plays a4, now after bishop b7, a takes on b5, black cannot recapture as the bishop on b7 is under attack, but after knight f6, black can force a draw or something very close to it. Queen e5, knight e7, queen e4, knight f6, and this position is just equal. Now instead, Kiemer played here knight f6, queen c2, and b5. After b3, this is a very typical idea in the Catalan. C takes, A takes. White has a very nice pressure against the weak pawns at the queen side, some knight e5, rook c1 ideas are incoming. So that's why here the young German played bishop b7, sacrificing the pawn back. Now after b takes, c5 was his idea. However, after c takes on b5 and c takes on d4, white got the better position after the opening. Now the most precise move here was to play a4 to secure the pawn on b5 as quickly as possible. Now rook d1 appeared to be slight inaccuracy from Gelfand's part, and now after the most accurate a6, black could have equalized the game with a point that a4, simply play a takes, and now it's the time to play queen b6, attacking the pawn on b5. But instead, here, after rook d1, Kiemer played queen b6 right away. And after a4, knight e4, he was thinking about ideas like d3 and queen takes on f2 threat. Boris in the interview mentioned that he was calculating some lines like knight takes on d4. He was not sure if they're working, so instead he played the more solid queen d3, which keeps the position more compact. And now after bishop f6, this appeared to be a mistake already in a slightly difficult position for black. a5, queen c5, knight h4 was a brilliant move by Gelfand, pinning the knight on e4, and the bishop on b7 is under attack. So after knight e6, rook c1, queen h5, here Gelfand played bishop b4, and after bishop takes on g2, bishop d6, rook d8, he had a big choice, which he definitely was trying to understand during the game. So either knight takes on g2, seek a solid advantage and simple position, or be slightly more ambitious and play bishop c7, win the exchange, but give his opponent some counterplay. Now, after some thought, the legend decided to play bishop c7, which is the strongest move, and after bishop d5 takes, he was very precise not to give his young opponent any chances to save the game. So knight g2, queen e5, b6 was played, and Gelfand's technique was flawless. So he continued to push forward the b-pawn, knight was rearranged to d3. He simplified the position by trying to trade queens. Of course, Kiemer rejected that. Rook a7, bishop c6, queen b4, rook c7. This time, black had no choice but to trade queens, and after very cute tactics, knight e3, black cannot take on c7, because after rook c8, rook b8, black simply loses. So the game was wrapped up quite quickly after knight c5, knight a6, rook b2, rook d7, rook b5, and finally this move, knight c7. Further simplifying the position as white forces black to trade one of the precious bishops here in the center, thus forcing the German to resign. Now, the big event of the round was the battle between Kirill Alexeyenko, who was in the second place overall, against the leader of the tournament, Gata Kamsky. So here e4 was played, and Kamsky surprised his opponent by playing the Alekhine defense, something which is a rare variation at highest level. Now after e5, knight e5, d4. This is a known opening line. c6, h3, g6, bishop c4. The Russian was able to get a nice advantage after the opening. So bishop g5, queen c7, queen c1, a nice sequence threatening to play bishop h6 and essentially base his entire strategy on black's bad light square bishop. So here after b5, Alexeyenko took on d5. First he pushed away the queen from attacking the pawn on c2, and only then he played bishop h6 to trade away the most active black's piece. So here after bishop e7, the bishops were traded, queen e3, rook e8, and Alexeyenko made a very nice plan to fight for the weakened dark squares. He played knight e2, c3. Now black should have played e5 right away. Bishop c6 might have been a loss of time for the American Grandmaster. b4, e5, takes, knight e3, takes and takes. So eventually we reached the position where white has a nice solid advantage, because the pawn on e5 is weak and black is slightly suffering because of the weakened dark squares. So here after rook c8, rook e1 was played. And after king f6, knight a5, a6, knight e4. Obviously, you cannot take on d4 because the rook on e8 is under attack. And after knight b8, knight b3, Kamsky had seen it enough. Clearly, he felt the position is really dangerous because white is threatening to play knight c5, maybe even f4, e4, and the knight goes back. And the bishop on c6 is going to be really bad for the entire game. So that's why he sacrificed the pawn. After c takes, rook takes, knight takes on d4, white was up an extra pawn. However, black was pretty active. And with a very accurate defense, Kamsky was able to save the game. So a number of moves here and there, and eventually white had no better choice than to go to a very tricky rook endgame. Now Kamsky showed a flawless defense, trading as many pawns as he could. Check here, rook e3, and very accurate a5. After b takes, rook a4, king e2, rook a5, king d2. White's idea was to get the king to the queen side so that the rook can be relieved from the defensive duties and white can try to establish a passed pawn. And after rook a4, rook b3, king f6. In the post-game interview, Alexienko felt that g3 was a mistake, and indeed, if he wanted to play g3, maybe he should have tried it at the earlier stage, because here the American Grandmaster was able to force a draw with a spectacular looking g4. Now the idea here is that after g takes on h4, which didn't happen in the game, after g takes, rook takes on h3, black plays b4, trading the pawns at a queen side, liquidating into a known drawn endgame. h5, king g7, h6, king h7. The f pawn might be pushed forward, and this maybe was the best chance for the Russian Grandmaster, but still, this should be a draw. Now instead here, after g4, the Russian Grandmaster played h takes on g4, and after h takes on g3, white played rook g3, b4, a takes, rook takes on b4, and despite the fact that white is up 2 extra pawns and they're connected, he cannot win this because the pawns are blocked. So here after f3, king g5, rook g1, king f4, rook f1, rook b3, even if black is not threatening to take on f3 because this would allow the g pawn run forward and queen, white cannot progress. So after king e2, the draw was agreed very, very quickly. So both players perfectly understood this is a draw. Excellent defending technique by Gata Kamsky, although also Kirill Alexeyenko was playing the game at the highest level, and this was indeed a true battle between the two leaders of the overall standings. So the overall standings at the moment look as follows. Gata Kamsky leads the tournament with 18 points. In the second place is Kirill Alexeyenko with 15 points. Sarin Nikal is in the third place, 13 points. Maxime Lagarde, Alain Pichot are behind with 12 points. Boris Gelfand, 9.5, Vincent Kiemer, 9. And thanks to yesterday's victory, Noel Studer has climbed with 8.5 points, not being so far away from the contention to climb even further. Excellent game yesterday for the Swiss Grandmaster. That was the day 3. The action resumes today with day 4. There's also more action incoming. On Saturday, the players are going to play a double round robin blitz tournament. The Bill Chess Festival is only halfway. More exciting games are upcoming. Enjoy it and see you in the official broadcast.